Welcome to Esoteric Thoughts. Today we have a very inspiring story with Samira. Hello, Samira. How are you?
Doing well.
Great. So, Samira, if you can just start by just talking about your childhood, and at the time you were following Islam, yes?
Yes, I was. So I grew up with a single mother and 4 siblings who embraced Islam at their own rate, I guess. And when I was about in 7th grade in middle school, I became heavily involved in Islam and the religion, and to the point where I was basically a fundamentalist. I would tell people, oh, music is haram, or things like, oh, you can't do this, and you can't, things I had no business doing. Anyways, so me and my friend, we would go, and then we ended up like fundraising for a mosque, and then we got a prayer room in our elementary school. And it was a lot. So so I was basically a fundamentalist until about grade 9 or 10 in high school. Then I started exploring, well, primarily my sexuality, and I was just like, maybe I'm not straight. And then had a sexual encounter with someone of the same sex as me, and I enjoyed it. So I'm like, okay, I'm not straight, but I can't live in limbo. Like, I can't live religiously and live with this secret deep down.
So,
And
so, 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 at that time, when you're Muslim, you're exploring your sexuality, what is the clash? As in, what does Islam say about being bisexual?
Islam is not very approving of it. It's basically a sin in Islam, and it's not. People are now turning around and saying like Islam accepts people of all genders and all sexualities, but it's not true. I don't believe it to be true. Like, people can I mean, the religion itself is changing. It will change through time because that's what all religions do. But I don't think it's at the point where it's completely accepting. And the people who are closest to the religion will tell you, no, this is not how it should be practiced and stuff like that. So I couldn't live my life in one foot in each door or on each side, or whatever, how the saying goes. So I said to myself, I need to do something. And then I ended up furthering away from Islam, but I wasn't quite an atheist at that point. I got further away from the religion, and then I embraced my sexuality. I said, okay, I am bisexual, but at that point I was still Muslim. And then I took off my hijab, and then people were like, oh, what a change. And some people were like, well, we don't like how you changed. I'm like, okay. And then, because I became more myself and more outspoken and things like that. So, and then it was I was still Muslim up until my first year of university. And that year I took an intro course to philosophy, and we studied philosophers like Spinoza, Descartes, and later on we studied Black American philosophers like W.E. Du Bois and stuff like that. So, and then in the philosophy class, he said something that was like mind shattering, or whatever you want to say. It made me think so hard and made me reflect. He said, God cannot be in our difference and in our similarity simultaneously. So I was just thinking, like, that's so true, because how can you say God is merciful and we are merciful, but we're unlike God? But so then I thought to myself, okay. And then I went home And I literally was like, is hell real? That was my first question. Is hell real? And I said to myself, I thought myself through it. And I said, our nervous system is how we feel pain. And if our body dies, our nervous system dies. And if our soul cannot live without a nervous system. And if we go on without our body and we are our soul in the afterlife, we can't feel pain. So like hell isn't a non-thing. It's not a thing. So I just told myself, yeah, it's not a thing. It's not. So then I went on to say sin is not a thing because hell cannot be real. So sin is not a thing. So I'm like, what am I doing? What am I doing with this religion? And then literally overnight, I emailed my professor. He emailed me back. Overnight, I became an atheist.
So at this point, what were your parents and family? How did they feel about your leaving Islam?
So my first person I told was a sister next to me. I have 3 sisters. And I told her, and she was like, oh, you can't be atheist just because your professor's atheist. He wasn't atheist. My professor was an atheist. So I was like, well, what he said in class was totally valid and correct. And I can't live my life in this space where I have this information and I have this faith that doesn't match up with each other. So then I told my eldest sister, who is the most religious in her family, she wears hijab and she goes to pray and everything. And she was like, oh my gosh, like, what do you, and then she was like, okay with it. She was like, okay, whatever. She's quite liberal herself. So I had no problem with that. But the problem was with my mother. So she was like, I stopped fasting, like the summer before, no, that summer. And then, well, I wasn't fasting regularly anyways, but I stopped completely fasting. And she was like, why aren't you fasting? I said, I don't fast. I'm not Muslim. And she goes like, how dare you say that? I'm like, whatever, like, whatever, I'm bye. I'm going on with my day.
So you actually found it quite easy to move on from Islam.
Yeah, because I'm a person who takes their education very personally, and I took it very personally when the professor said that, and I said, how can I apply this to my life? Because that's what I do. When I learn things, I apply it to my life because I want to become a better person. I want to become more like, I don't want to say evolved, but like, just changed as a person through education, through learning.
So now where are we now? We're in 2016 as part of your story. So what happened? What happened next?
Oh gosh. So I felt okay. So I was 18. I was 18 in 2016, and I fell into my first depressive episode. So that lasted a year, and that was okay. I wouldn't say the hardest year of my life, but like probably like the 3rd hardest year of my life. So I like I was on summer break the last 4 months of the first depressive episode. So it was the deepest and darkest time that I was in because I wasn't eating at all. I shrunk down to dangerously underweight, and my sister was like, why aren't you eating? Why aren't you doing things? Like, she was getting very frustrated. My family was getting very frustrated with me. So I was like, I physically can't, because this is how I explain depression to people who've never experienced it. It's like trying to run a marathon with your feet cemented to the ground. That's how deep my depression was. So I said to myself, like, I can't do this. I can't do this. And I would think of dying constantly every hour of the day. I would lay in bed, just think of dying. And like Google, like when I had enough energy, I would Google ways to die. Like, it was ridiculous. And then I went, you'll find this interesting. I went to a walk-in clinic, and the family doctor that I saw was Muslim. And it was during Ramadan. And I said, I'm not eating. I'm barely eating a meal a day. And he goes like, oh, you should be fasting anyways. It doesn't matter. I was so shocked. I looked at him. I was like, and he left the room. I was like, oh my God, is this the healthcare that Ontario gets for free?
So even though you went for advice on your health and your mental state of mind, the doctor placed his religion before giving you the health advice that you needed.
Yeah.
Wow.
That's probably the worst doctor I've seen in the history of doctors. So, so he said like, oh, you should be fasting anyways. It doesn't matter. And he left the room. And I said, how else am I going to get help? How am I going to get help? And then I went to a friend's party, and then I came home crying because that was the last bit of energy I had. My friend's like, oh, let's go out. And I'm like, okay. And then last bit of energy I had, and I just came home crying and crying. And then my family did not know what to do with me. They thought someone like physically assaulted me or something happened. So they called the ambulance, and then the ambulance was talking to me, and they're like, what's going on? What's in your head? I was like, I couldn't eat, and I couldn't. And then they asked me, I was so thin to the point where they asked me, do you have anorexia? And I was like, no, no, I don't. And then I was just like thinking in my head, like, I don't know how to get out of this. And then I went to see the ER doctor. He said, I'll refer you to psychiatric counseling with the psychiatrist. And then those last 6 weeks or 8 weeks of my depression were the hardest weeks, one of the hardest weeks I've been through, because I was just laying in bed waiting for the appointment. And I told myself, this is my last opportunity to get help. And if I don't get help, I will end up dying by suicide. So then they were interviewing me, blah, blah, blah. The doctors came in. She said something very strange to me. She said, I was dying of depression, literally. And she goes to me, so her first question to me after I was sitting with the resident, like I don't know, in England, they call them junior doctors. So I was sitting with the resident, and then she comes in and she goes like, oh, how do you pay for school? And that was her first question to me. So I look at her like, I paid for school by like a loan, like a provincial loan program that they have. So I was like, OSAP, which is the name of the acronym of the whatever. And then I said OSAP, and she's like, okay, OSAP. And I went home, and I was like, how dare she ask me such a stupid question? I'm literally dying in front of her. And then I went home, and I dwelled over that, and I didn't know that it was my other disorder peeking its ugly head or rearing its ugly head, and I didn't know that. And I was just like, what is going on with my body? And they gave me antidepressants. In 2 weeks, I became manic. I don't know how I became manic so fast, but that's what happened. And then I started, like, I became psychotically manic. So at the end of it, they diagnosed me with bipolar type 1 with psychotic features. And I was having crazy thoughts, like people are trying to kidnap my mother, people are talking about me at the bus stop, people are trying to, and then like it was during reading week, I was hospitalized for 4 days or 5 on different occasions, but I was hospitalized for 4 days. And then I heard on the radio that my university was closed, and I said, I'm the reason it closed. I'm such a horrible person. I closed down the entire university, and I literally wanted to take the radio and smash it to pieces. But I said, I can't do that. And then I thought there was spies on the unit, and I thought like, and then I see this doctor, and I'm like, where's the doctor? Let's call him Dr. Good Looking, because he was good looking. So he said, I'm like, where's he? And then she's like, okay, he'll be with you in like half an hour. He comes to me, and he asked me, because in previous times I called my other doctor Satan, which I didn't mean in a literal way, but they took it literally. Like, so then he comes he asks me one question. You know what that question is? He asked me, what's your religion? And I said, atheist. I'm an atheist. And he goes like, okay, you can go home now. And I'm just thinking in my head, like, okay, I get to go home. I was literally begging them to go home. But it wasn't a good idea for me to go home because I was quite sick. So I started hiding my laptop under the sofa cushions, and I started like writing weird messages to people and telling people they're trying to test me, they're trying to talk about me, they're everything. Like it was, and I thought the whole neighborhood was out to get me. So I went back to the hospital and I said, people are in my phone, and I thought there's like spies in my phone. So I was like, people are in my phone, and then the nurse was like, wait, who's in your phone? I said, I don't know, people. And then she goes like, okay. And I see the same psychiatrist that discharged me, and he was like, he didn't know what to say to me. He's like, are you feeling better? And I'm like, kind of, yeah, yeah. And then they discharged me again, and I get better in like 2 or 3 days, and I have another appointment with them, and then yeah, so that's where.
And then in January of 2020, what happened?
Yeah, so previous to on that day of I'm gonna go back up 3 or 4 years for 1 second. October 24th, 2017 is when I got diagnosed with bipolar type 1 and borderline personality disorder. So I was quite suicidal for about 6 years. I still am. I shouldn't be, but I still am. And I would have like weekly, like dozens of thoughts of suicide, and I would attempt quite often. I would like multiple drug overdoses, like prescription drug overdoses, but anyways, drug overdoses. And to the point where some of them would make me unconscious, and I would like, this is embarrassing, but I would like pee myself in a drug overdose. And then I would wake up in hospital, and the nurses would be like, you peed yourself. And I'm like, can I go home now? Anyways, so I like, and then one time I had seizures back to back after a drug overdose. And then like with my disorder, with my, not my bipolar disorder, but what was bipolar disorder, my personality disorder, it is, there's this specialist psychologist who specializes in borderline personality disorder, and she says people with this disorder are like third degree, the emotional equivalent of third degree burn victims. If you touch their skin, they will scream, and if you say the slightest thing that is perceived in a wrong way, I'm not as bad as I used to be. It gets better in time, they all say. But like I used to like collapse in the middle of the emergency room, waiting room, and just in tears, and they would all surround me. They're like, get up, get up. I'm just crying in tears. I would storm out of my doctor's office. And like there was this cycle of like these thoughts coming in my mind, and then going to the hospital, and then getting a little bit better, and then these thoughts again coming up, and then eventually on January 27th, 2020, I jumped off a 10-story balcony, and I went through multi-system blunt trauma, which included, but not only, spinal cord injury, hence why I'm in a chair, spinal cord injury, traumatic brain injury, respiratory failure, cardiac arrest, more than 40 fractures, including a life-threatening pelvic fracture, a hemo and pneumothorax. So I had a bleeding lung and air in between my chest and my lung. And then I had a brain injury, which has the survival rate of 10%. It's called diffused axonal injury, and it affects the entire brain. So I'm quite slowed down by it. But yes, and then I had an unknown number of strokes, which affected my vision and my right side, no, my left side, sorry, my left side. And then the vision took about 60% of my vision away. I mean, not the vision took. The stroke took 60% of my vision away. And what else? I live with paralysis and with hemiparesis and a visual impairment and a brain injury. That's what stuck. Like, that's the disability. That's what makes me most disabled, is the neurotrauma. So yeah. Anyways.
So we're not going to go into the detail of the depression, but was it related to religion in any way, or by that stage had you moved on from that?
I think it is related to depression, because if the doctor didn't discharge me after asking me one question, which was, what's your religion, I would have gotten more thorough care, and he would have been more thorough with me. But, because I said I'm an atheist, he just assumed that, okay, she's not terribly religious, so she's okay, like making sense to herself at least, and then to me, to the doctor. So I think, yeah, so I think it did affect me because of their careless interviewing and discharging me and stuff like that. I ended up jumping off a 10-story balcony, so I think it is related to that.
And to be clear, that 10-story balcony was approximately 130 feet.
Yeah.
So now, what support do you have around you now?
Oh yeah, the world of support. I have support from my doctors, from my family. My family, they weren't very, like, in the early days when I was getting diagnosed with bipolar disorder, then changed to schizoaffective disorder. When I was getting diagnosed with that, they're like, oh, you don't have it, you don't have this personality disorder, you don't have this. You're just acting very strange. You don't really have it, but we don't see this behavior in you, so we don't think you have it. But whatever. And then I was like, no, I was professionally diagnosed. Like, this is what I have. And then they weren't very, because I blame the lack of education, like mental health education. So when I told my sister I had bipolar disorder, because at that time that's what I had, she said, like, oh no, I don't think you have it, because in the media you think someone with bipolar disorder, you think they're up and down, up and down, up and down constantly. No, the most up and down people get is with rapid cycling, and I think that's 4 cycles in a year. So, and the average person, when they're not medicated, has 1 cycle a year. So it's not that drastic up and down kind of thing. But that's what my sister thought it was, and she wasn't very supportive of me at the beginning. But then after me getting professionally diagnosed with my psychotic illness, which was schizoaffective disorder, they were very on board. And I think it was a little too late, because I ended up getting arrested and all this stuff. And then I had to get this hospital, certain people from hospital staff involved, and they triggered my attempt, right? So I don't want to blame my family, but if they were more in tune with with me, they would have figured it out that I wasn't doing so well. And I think my sister, the day of my psychotic break, I told her I had insight. So insight is something someone has when they know they're sick. So, and on the other hand, there's anosognosia, which when people don't know they're ill. But in the beginning stages, I knew I was going into this episode, and I texted my sister. I said, they're back again. And she's like, who's back again? I said, they're back again. And then as in the delusions are back again. And then I ended up calling 911 myself, saying, I need help. I'm going to hurt myself or other people if I don't get help. And they came and they helped me. They helped me in their own way. They arrested me. I mean, they sent me to the psych ward for 26 days, and then they arrested me. because apparently I made a threat, but like that's not how I saw it. That's not how it went down in my mind. In my mind, I was saving the doctor from my rage and my, you know, from me. So because I thought my doctor was poisoning me with mood stabilizers because I was taking mood stabilizers at that point. And I thought she was poisoning the day of my psychotic break. I thought it was poison. So I told them, like, she's trying to hurt me. She's trying to hurt me. So in my head, I'm trying to hurt her, but I know it's not a good thing to hurt people because that's not what decent people do. So I said to myself, I'm struggling in my mind because I have like these two opposing thoughts and I don't know what to do. And so I called my sister, I texted my sister. She said, I'll come drop off groceries at your house and I'll come to you then. I'm working now. And I'm like, okay. And then no one was helping me. I was blaming my family. I'm like, you called the ambulance on me. No one called the ambulance on me. And I was having all these delusions of like persecution, everyone out to get me, things like that. And then she just, I ended up calling 911 and saying, like, help me. I'm going to hurt my doctor if I don't get this help because I'm having these thoughts, these very strong thoughts, and I don't want to hurt anyone. So please help me. And they came, they brought me to the hospital. They hospitalized me for 26 days. And then after that, I had security follow me. And it sounds very stupid, but it's because what the security said to me that day that I jumped, that's the reason I jumped. But I don't know entirely what they said because I don't remember that day. And I didn't tell anyone what they said. I just told them that these people from the hospital staff they're triggering me, and I feel like jumping off a 10-story building. And that's the last text I sent to my friend, and that's what happened.
So your story is remarkable on so many levels. For everybody watching, what message do you want to tell them regarding mental health awareness?
I want to say there's so many people struggling. I think in Canada, 1 in 5 people have a mental illness. In the UK, I think it's like 1 in 4. Is that right? Yeah, and then there's so many people struggling. Like, just try to be compassionate, and try to understand where the behavior is coming from. People just don't act out, and people don't do things. Like, I've done devastating things to my body over very small things, it seems, but to me, it was a huge deal. And I just want people to know that be kind to people. You don't know what they're going through, and try to be compassionate, try to lend an ear. Maybe text a friend who's having troubles, or refer them, or help them get resources, or just listen to people who are having mental health struggles, because half the time that's all I need is for people to listen to me. Because if I'm having a BPD episode or a psychotic episode, I'm just, and there's ways to de-escalate a situation. There's ways to, and I don't think police are the best people to do it, because I've interacted with the police. I mean, they were very kind to me because I had a professional diagnosis and everything, but some of them were just very, very they treated me as if I was a criminal, and like at this point I was floridly psychotic and I was in handcuffs. Like, why would you put me in handcuffs? I wasn't gonna run away. Obviously I was walking with you, and I wasn't harmed to anyone else close to me. So I mean, there's better ways to treat people with mental health conditions rather than the police responding. I mean, they are the first responders. If they are going to be the first responders, I think they require more training to de-escalate situations and not to get people hurt or themselves hurt, So, and also, I was reading this article sometime before my injuries. I remember it saying in Ottawa, 20% of 911 calls are from for mental health crises. And and there's only a six, I think, don't quote me on this, but a 6-person mental health officer, mental health unit in Ottawa. So, I mean, that's massively disproportionate. Like, how are people going to respond to 20% of calls? You're going to send out regular, untrained police officers to a mental health crisis, you know?
And one of my final questions for those who are seeking to leave religion, but are uncertain, they don't have the necessary support around them, what will be your advice to them?
Well, safety is number one, because Islam can be a very dangerous religion to leave. So if you feel unsafe around your family or friends or in the country you live in, it's best to seek, it's best to not out yourself or be outed by other people. But try to find, if they have access to internet and a means to get internet, try to find like-minded communities, like your channel and everything. So try and just, you know, safety is number one, I would say.
Samira, I really do appreciate you giving us the time. Your story is unique in so many ways, and I think many people will be able to identify with this. We admire your resilience, and you have a good support network around you in Canada, but also I'm sure with regards to the people who are actually watching this, you have their support as well. So
Thank
Samira,
you.
thank you.
Thank you so very much.